Hey everybody, it's Steve with the About Mansfield podcast, and we're changing things up a little bit this week and possibly next week as well, essentially so I can focus on more pressing matters such as health of those around me. In recent weeks, common vocabulary in my home has included MRI, CAT scan, surgery, biopsy, echocardiogram, scrape and burn, Mohs, chemo, and the list goes on. So as you can imagine, focusing on both our health and local news simultaneously has become a strain. Our feature reporters, Angel, Beth, and Brian, have each filed reports, and we will hear from them momentarily. And then we're going to follow it up with an interview that we aired back in 2022 with Mansfield resident Christy Silvas about her hiking excursion on the Camino de Santiago through France, Spain, and Portugal. We thank you all for listening. We'll talk to you next week. Now, let's turn the page to the feature section.
Have you heard of UTIs causing confusion in seniors? I'm Angel Biasatti, and we'll be talking about it more next in Methodist Mansfield News to Know.
Should a buyer reach out directly to the listing agent to buy a house? I'm Beth Steinke, and today we will discuss agency, fiduciary duties, and representation in the Mansfield Real Estate Report.
In this week's Cocktail of the Week, I'll be talking about a cocktail that is a ginger-laced bourbon-forward refreshment with a fruity kick and a bubbly finish.
Hey there, it's Luke from Cool Hand Electric. Are you tired of dealing with plugs or lights that just won't cooperate? Well, don't fret. Give us a call. Worried about power outages or surges damaging your precious electronics? We've got you covered. Whether it's a whole house generator or surge protection, our solution-oriented Cool Hands are ready to tailor the perfect option that suits your needs and budget. At Cool Hand Electric, excellence is still cool.
Cool Hand, Cool Hand, Cool Hand, where excellence is still cool.
Are you ready to take advantage of falling mortgage interest rates in the coming months? This is Roger with the Roger and Beth team. With housing demand predicted to increase across the DFW Metroplex, the Roger and Beth team are standing by to help move you and your family forward. No move in your future? That's okay too. It's time for your annual review of your real estate portfolio, and we're happy to help. Contact us at homesinmansfield.com. That's homesinmansfield.com.
This is Paul Duncan with Trinity Solar Services. That's right, solar. Back in the 1960s, NASA used solar cells in their space missions. But get this, the very first solar cells were actually invented back in 1883. Solar energy has made great strides over the past 140 years, but one theme remains constant: solar works. Solar panels are the MVPs of renewable energy. While reducing carbon emissions and taking a stand against climate change, solar panels can also help to greatly reduce your electric bill. Trinity Solar Services is your sun-powered solutions, and we want to deck out your home with top-notch Tier 1 panels without breaking the bank. Reach out to us today for a complimentary quote. Trinity Solar Services is a Mansfield-based company that's all about building relationships through good old-fashioned, family-owned business values. Find us online at trinitysolarservices.com. That's trinitysolarservices.com.
Are you ready to create unforgettable memories? Picture this: an enchanting event venue nestled amidst breathtaking landscapes with panoramic views right here in Mansfield. The Grandview Event Center is the perfect setting to bring your vision to life. From intimate gatherings to large-scale extravaganzas, the Grandview has flexible spaces to accommodate any occasion, be it a wedding reception, corporate Christmas party, or community gathering. Book your next unforgettable experience at thegrandviewmansfield.com. That's thegrandviewmansfield.com. The Grandview Event Center, where memories are made and dreams become reality. Book your event today.
Hi, I'm Ebony Turner, and you're listening to About Mansfield.
Let's bust some myths and explore the fascinating connection between urinary health and cognitive clarity in older adults. When an elderly loved one suddenly becomes disoriented or forgetful, dementia always jumps in mind. But guess what? The culprit might be something far less and treatable, like a urinary tract infection. UTIs can lead to a state of confusion known as delirium, especially in seniors. Delirium isn't just any confusion. It's sudden, intense, where individuals may not recognize where they are or even who they are. Some might experience hallucinations, making it a frightening experience for both the person affected and their loved ones. So if you notice sudden neurological symptoms in a senior, it's crucial to seek medical attention. Most UTIs are caused by bacteria that can affect various parts of the urinary system. While anyone can get an UTI, seniors are at higher risk of experiencing neurological impacts like delirium. So if grandma or grandpa starts acting out of character, it might be time for a UTI check. The good news, UTIs are highly treatable. Catching the infection early can prevent further complications, and once treated, not only will the infection clear up, but the confusion or delirium should also improve. Prevention is key. Where there's no guaranteed way to prevent delirium, there are steps to protect against UTIs. For women, good hygiene habits, staying hydrated, and avoiding irritating products can help reduce the risk. If you or a loved one suspects a UTI, don't wait. Get evaluated sooner rather than later. So, UTIs might not be the first thing that comes to mind when thinking about confusion in seniors, but they're a crucial piece of the puzzle. By understanding the connection and taking preventative measures, we can help our seniors stay sharp and vibrant. Remember, knowledge is power, so spread the word and help us bust those UTI myths. Stay curious, stay informed. Until next time, keep shining bright. I'm Angel Biasatti reporting for the About Mansfield podcast.
Not that long ago, buyers had to rely on listing agents to buy a house. Having a buyer's agent just wasn't a thing. Since consumer protection has become a hot-button issue, important changes were made to encourage a buyer to have their own representation in a real estate transaction. That's why real estate agents are called agent, with signed agreements that create agency relationship that requires a realtor to put the best interest of their clients above all others, including themselves and definitely above that of the other side. In a typical real estate transaction, there is one agent to represent the best interest of the seller and one agent to represent the best interest of the buyer. A couple of months ago, my buyer found a house that they absolutely loved. We worked through some due diligence before preparing our offer, and this is what we learned. When the seller had purchased this home, he worked directly with the previous seller's agent and did not have his own representation. And after he closed on the home, he discovered a number of not very fun surprises, the biggest of which was that he did not even own his driveway. The previous owner had a handshake deal with the neighbor to put a concrete slab on the neighbor's land and to use it to park his vehicle. Imagine buying a house and finding out that you don't even own your own driveway or parking pad. While this may not have affected his usability, it definitely impacted the ability to sell the property. Lucky for him, the neighbor was willing to grant an official recorded easement, so he was able to sell and transfer that to the new buyer. Good thing he wasn't in a hurry, though, because all of this would have had to be signed, sealed, and delivered before he could close on his new home and move on with his life. And he had already moved out of this house before he even discovered any of this. This is just one story, and I could tell many. In this case, it is possible that the original agent did everything right, and he was just overwhelmed and didn't understand what he was being told, or was too embarrassed to ask questions. Regardless, the lesson here is the same. You are entitled to your own representation, and under no circumstances would I ever recommend a buyer working directly with a listing agent. This includes builders. The builder's sales rep work for the seller, not for you, no matter how fun and friendly they seem. In reality, how can one person look out for the best interest of two people on opposing sides? It's just not possible. But it does happen, and the state of Texas calls this type of transaction an intermediary relationship, and all parties must understand what is happening and agree to it. In an intermediary situation, we go from representing one party to technically representing no one. Using a sports analogy, you can think of it this way. As your agent, we act as your coach, providing help, suggestions, solutions, and ideas, and most importantly, advice. But when we switch to intermediary status, we become more like a referee, and we can no longer provide advice, but can only pass factual information back and forth between the parties. And honestly, that gets weird and uncomfortable, because in the end, someone ends up feeling like they were not well represented. We are seeing a trend of buyers reaching out directly to listing agents, and I get it. They're frustrated in this market, but foregoing representation is not the answer. A candid conversation about your needs and a revisiting of expectations with your agent is the best course of action. So get an agent, a great agent that you enjoy working with, and go find your dream home together. Are there real estate topics you want to learn more about? Send me a message at info@aboutmansfield.com. For the About Mansfield podcast, I'm Beth Steinke with Century 21 Judge Fight.
This week's cocktail of the week is the Kentucky Buck. The Kentucky Buck is a refreshing and zesty cocktail that beautifully combines the robustness of bourbon with the tang of ginger and the sweetness of strawberries. This modern classic has quickly gained popularity among cocktail enthusiasts and bourbon lovers alike, like me, thanks to its well-balanced flavors and its easy-to-make recipe. The origins of the Kentucky Buck can be traced back to the early 2000s when the cocktail scene was experiencing a resurgence in the interest of classic drinks with their modern interpretations. The Kentucky Buck is believed to have been created by a bartender named Eric Castro, who was working at the Rick House Bar in San Francisco. Castro was inspired by the Moscow Mule and its cousin, the Kentucky Mule, a cocktail made with vodka, ginger beer, and lime juice. But he decided to give the classic a southern twist by replacing the vodka with bourbon, the spirit synonymous with the state of Kentucky, and to add a fruity dimension to the drink, Castro muddled fresh strawberries into the mixture, creating a delightful balance of flavors. The Kentucky Buck quickly gained popularity at the Rick House and soon spread to other cocktail bars across the country. Its appeal lies in its ability to showcase the bold flavors of bourbon while also offering a refreshing and easy drinking experience, making it perfect for any occasion. But don't worry about taking notes as I'm giving out the ingredients and instructions. I'll always post them on bourbongospel.com. So how do you make this wonderful southern concoction? First, take 2 ounces of a good bourbon, 1 ounce of fresh lemon juice, ½ ounce of ginger syrup, 2 to 3 fresh strawberries, 2 dashes of Angostura bitters, ginger beer, and then for garnish, you'll need some strawberries and mint sprigs. How do you make this cocktail? In a cocktail tin, muddle the strawberries with the ginger simple syrup and the lemon juice. Then add the bourbon and the Angostura bitters to the shaker, fill with ice, and shake for 10 to 15 seconds until well chilled. Strain the mixture into a highball glass filled with ice, and then top with ginger beer, giving the drink a gentle stir to combine the ingredients. Garnish with a fresh strawberry and a sprig of mint, and serve it immediately. To make the ginger syrup, you just simply make a simple syrup with fresh ginger in it and let it steep for at least 30 minutes. I actually introduced this cocktail about this time last summer, and it quickly became the cocktail of the summer at my house. I was even able to convert a few new members to the Bourbon Gospel congregation who previously said they didn't care for bourbon cocktails. But as the popularity of the Kentucky Buck grew, bartenders began to experiment with variations on the original recipe. Some swapped out the strawberries for other seasonal fruits like blackberries or peaches or even watermelon, while others played with the proportions of ingredients to create a more bourbon-forward or fruit-forward drink. The Kentucky Buck has also found its way into the world of bottled cocktails and the RTD, or ready-to-drink beverages, making it easier than ever for people to enjoy this delightful concoction at home or even on the go. But as you sip your Kentucky Buck, take a moment to appreciate the ingenuity and creativity of the bartenders who have helped make this cocktail a modern classic. From its humble beginnings at the Rick House Bar to its current status as the beloved bourbon cocktail at my house, the Kentucky Buck is a testament to the enduring appeal of well-crafted drinks that balance tradition with innovation. As always, I'm open to hear your take and your input. You can reach me at brian@bourbongospel.com. And until next week, as Mark Twain said, too much of anything is bad, but too much whiskey is barely enough. Reporting for the About Mansfield podcast, I'm Brian Certain.
Hey there, it's Luke from Cool Hand Electric. Are you tired of dealing with plugs or lights that just won't cooperate? Well, don't fret. Give us a call. Worried about power outages or surges damaging your precious electronics? We've got you covered. Whether it's a whole house generator or surge protection, our solution-oriented Cool Hands are ready to tailor the perfect option that suits your needs and budget. At Cool Hand Electric, excellence is still cool.
Cool Hand, cool excellences feel cool.
I'm Philip Washington, Chief Investment Officer of Stonehill Wealth Management and host of the Wealth Building Made Simple podcast. First book I read in college was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it changed my life. And since then, I've read tons and tons of books on money. And what I've done is taken those lessons, simplified them, and I talk about those lessons on my podcast, Wealth Building Made Simple. So come hang out with us. We're on every major platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube, Wealth Building Made Simple.
At Methodist Mansfield Medical Center, we've been caring for our home team for over 15 years. Today, you'll find award-winning physicians on the medical staff, advanced neurosurgery, a level 3 trauma center, critical care for newborns, and comprehensive orthopedic care. Methodist Mansfield, delivering the care our friends, neighbors, and home team depend on. That's community, and why so many people trust Methodist.
Hi, this is Joe Jenkins with Joe Jenkins Farmers Insurance, specializing in auto, home, commercial, and life insurance. I was born and raised here in Mansfield, Texas. We're active in the community, and Mansfield's a town we really care about. Our office has over 30 years' experience in the insurance industry, and we're passionate about what we do and about customer service. For a free quote, please visit our website at joejenkinsinsurance.com or give us a call at 817-472-6058. Once again, that website is joejenkinsinsurance.com.
Imagine a city where innovation knows no bounds, where dreams take flight, and the future unfolds before your very eyes. Welcome to Mansfield, a beacon of growth and a testament to vision. In the heart of Mansfield, a remarkable transformation is underway. But it's not just about the physical landscape. It's about the spirit that drives us forward. A spirit of collaboration that bridges cultures, a spirit of entrepreneurship that fuels prosperity, and a spirit of community that binds us as one. Mansfield is more than just a place. It's a canvas where diversity paints the picture of progress. From art festivals that ignite creativity to tech hubs that redefine boundaries, this city celebrates every voice, every passion. Mansfield, where growth knows no limits and the vision is limitless. Brought to you by the unstoppable spirit of the Mansfield Economic Development Corporation.
Hi, I'm Corey Berlin, 2022 Boston Marathon finisher, and you're listening to About Mansfield.
Welcome back to another segment of About Mansfield. I'm Steve Casillo as we make the transition from news to talk. And in the studio today, she took a 90-day trip in Europe. Not only just a trip, but an excursion that we're going to talk about because it has religious ramifications. It has personal ramifications. She traveled alone, and we welcome to the studio Christy Silvas, who lives here in Mansfield, and welcome to About Mansfield.
Well, I am just so thrilled to be here. Listen to you all the time.
Oh, thank you.
Not sure if I want to listen to myself next week, but...
Oh, you will.
I will.
You took 90 days out of your life to walk the Camino de Santiago.
Right. Well, I chose the 90 days because that is the maximum amount you can be in Europe without having to get a visa.
Oh, okay.
So I actually took me 73 days to walk the Camino. So I had time before and time afterwards. So I don't want to exaggerate. It wasn't a 90-day walk. It was only 73 days.
73. And so this the first question that immediately comes to mind is why?
Why? Well, no. My immediate response is no snakes and no bears.
Okay. They have no snakes in Europe?
Not on the Camino.
Okay.
Or at least not where I was. A number of years ago, a close friend of mine from high school did for his 60th birthday, did a trek in Nepal. Mm-hmm. And he had the Sherpas. They went up, I don't think they went as far as base camp, up through the Himalayas. But I thought, how cool. And in talking to him and following him, it was just like, something I wanted to do to prove to myself I could do it. He's like me, old fart, little overweight, little out of shape, but did it. And so then I was interested in doing some type of long trek like that. I think his was, several months that he did it. But being a little bit of a chicken,
But there are no snakes and bears in the Himalayas.
No, there are, but it's cold. And I didn't want to sleep in a tent all the time. So I looked at the Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest, Continental Divide, what was available. And all of it was a little more than what I was willing to endure. I didn't want to sleep with critters at night or whatever. And I had actually seen the way.
Yeah.
And then researched doing the Camino de Santiago. And it seemed certainly much more doable with food and a place to sleep every night, and seemed like, why not?
And for the benefit of the listeners, The Way is a Martin Sheen movie released in 2010 where Martin Sheen plays a CEO of a company.
He was an ophthalmologist.
He was an ophthalmologist. Okay. Well, yes. I was.
Yeah, he was up there.
And his free-spirited son wanted to walk the Camino, and I'm going to leave that. No spoiler alerts here. If you want to know what the Camino is all about, that's a good place to start.
Yeah. Yes. It gives you an idea.
Now, also for the benefit of the listeners, describe what the Camino is and how you chose your specific route.
The Camino is actually has been around for over 1,000 years. And what it is, it originally started as a spiritual journey to go from some point in Europe to Santiago de Compostela, which is where the tomb of St. James is. And 1,000 some odd years ago, and when I say some odd, I mean like 1,200 or 1,300. I lose track of the numbers. They discovered a tomb and said, yes, of course, this is St. James, and we will build a cathedral. And in order for people to get special dispensation to get to heaven without working too hard, if you walk to the tomb of St. James, you will be, blessed. And or if you were a prisoner and needed punishment for your sins, you were ordered to do it.
So this is not an easy a walk in the park.
Now it's much easier than it was. It used to be you just, carried what you had and ate and walked in your bare feet or sandals and went that away and hoped you weren't murdered along the way by, thieves and such.
It's a pilgrimage.
It's a pilgrimage, yes.
And winding up at the end at the tomb of St. James. Santiago, I would assume, based on its name, is in Spain.
It is in Spain, and Santiago is a Spanish name for St. James.
Yes.
And it's the actual city is Santiago de Compostela, which is the St. James of the stars, wherein apparently there were some stars in the sky that somebody said, ooh, I wonder what those stars are for. So they walked over there and voila, there was the tomb of St. James. So these are all interesting little stories and miracles.
Let's talk about the planning process, because you don't just buy a plane ticket and take off for 73 days. Obviously, there's got to be some type of planning.
Yeah.
Let's start with that.
Well, certainly the first part of the planning is figuring out when, where, and how you're going to do it. So I originally had my plane tickets, and I was all ready to go in 2020. And then this little bug came into the picture, and so I had to cancel it. And I wasn't able to resume that plan until this last year. Things are always fortuitous in that in 2020, I only had my summer vacation, 60 days max to be able to complete it. Wherein now I was retired and I had up to 90 days without having to go through extra visa stuff. Right. So I went ahead and bought a plane ticket for exactly 90 days and said, I will walk until I get there and then see what I want to do.
You mentioned that you only had 60 days for summer because you worked for a school.
Yes.
And you have summers off.
Summers off.
And you worked for one of the Mansfield schools as a nurse.
I did. I was, shout out to Summit High School Jaguars. I was the school nurse there for 15 some odd years. And then I was the special needs nurse for the end of my career there, taking care of all my special kiddos there.
Back to the Camino, this kind of leads into the next topic, but first to kind of get some background, how many miles did you walk over 73 days?
It was about 750 miles altogether.
All right. Let's talk about fitness. I know that you're an avid golfer. Mm-hmm. You and I have played tennis countless times. I know you're an avid pickleballer.
Not so good at pickleball, but
all right.
Working on it.
Did you feel prior to boarding the plane to Europe, did you feel that you were prepared in terms of, yes, you were.
And the reason I say that is that I specifically planned on being used to walking. So like when you're talking about golf, as many people know me, I'm the old lady out there walking the course all the time. So I would, when I did walk, I tried to get, probably 8+ miles a day. When I'm walking. And my thought process on doing the Camino was walk until I'm done walking and not run, not race, don't push it, take your time, and plan accordingly. I used to carry my bag when I walked, but I haven't done that in quite a while. So I figured if I used to carry my bag, which was a lot heavier than my backpack, I could do that. So I was in decent shape as far as the walking part. I wasn't prepared as much for the uphill downhill part of it. The first 3, 6, 9, 12 miles is straight up into the Pyrenees, and I think my first day, which was only 7 miles long, was 157 flights uphill.
That's good for the calves.
Yes, but a lot of people do the full 20 miles over the initial mountain peak.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I'm going to ease my way into it.
But then you can't sled down the backside of the Pyrenees.
No, because it is rocky and steep, and I was very slow and methodical and figured I was more concerned about getting injured than I was about getting any place in a particular time.
90 days, you really didn't have a time limit.
Nope.
Then you had to be out of the country in 90 days, but you knew that it wasn't going to take 90 days for you to get to your destination.
Right. And it also gave me the leisure to be able to stop and smell the roses.
Sure.
And say, ooh, what's that over there? I'll go check it out. And stay extra days someplace that was more interesting or needed extra time to stay there.
You were physically prepared. You were mentally prepared?
Yeah, it's weird because as the time approached for me to leave, I was developing a little bit of anxiety of like, what in God's green earth am I doing? Leaving everything I know. I know more French than I know Spanish, and where I started in the Camino starts out in France. Mm-hmm. So I was fine with getting about and being able to ask for things, and then I get into Spain, and I'm still speaking French, and my Spanish is very minimal. It improved a little bit. But
and then you had to add the lisp to the S's.
Oh, yes, because then when we get to Barcelona or in the Basque country, you've got very different languages. When you have two parts of your country trying to secede with their own languages, and even the street signs were in different languages.
Wow.
So in the Basque region, street signs, everything was in Basque. In the Catalonian region, everything was in Catalonia.
What city did you fly into?
I actually flew into Paris, and I stayed there for a week. just, being the tourist, doing the touristy things. I'd been there before, so there were some places I hadn't been that I really wanted to go see and do. Part of my training for climbing over the Alps was I did the walk up the Eiffel Tower. So that was about the extent of my hiking uphill training, because as you can see around Mansfield, not a lot of steep hills.
No.
I would go hiking with friends of mine, and we would go to Mountain Cedar Nature Preserve.
Yeah.
And that has much more steep hiking type hills, but not 7 miles straight of it.
Flew into Paris, and then where did the trek start?
You take the train down to southern France and at Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and that is, I think, about 40 or 50 miles north of the Spain-French border.
Okay.
So you're actually walking a few days before you come across the border, and if you blink, you will miss it.
And you get off the train, and they say, okay, you're on your way. Did they just point you in a direction?
No,
or?
Actually, it's a little bit more formal than that.
Okay.
So I took the train from Paris down to Saint-Jean, and at Saint-Jean they have the pilgrims, what's known as the pilgrims office. And in many of the towns where pilgrimages start, there's a pilgrims office, and where the Camino passes through, there are pilgrim offices. So you go there, you check in, so they know who's on the trail.
Right.
Then you get what's known as your credential, which is essentially a little passport that you have so that you can stay in the albergues. Albergues, I still can't figure out how they pronounce it. But the albergues are essentially hostels, but only people who are pilgrims with an authentic credential can stay in them. Otherwise, you can stay in private hostels, hotels, whatever. So you have to get your credential, and then when you get to Santiago, you get by showing them your credentials of how far you walk to get there, you get a nice, lovely Latin certificate that says you did it.
Good job.
Woohoo! Good job. So I have this wonderful, pretty piece of paper in Latin. No idea what it says, but apparently it says woohoo!
And framed and hanging in your den?
Still sitting on the kitchen counter with assorted junk that I've been home a month and I still haven't gotten actually less than a month, and I still haven't gotten my act together.
Let's talk about the equipment. What did you bring, and did you have to buy anything in Europe So I would assume, all right, backpack, maybe walking sticks, several pairs of socks.
So I had my little kind of day backpack that I was going to use, and my daughters thought that was not adequate. And so they bought me a lovely plug here, REI, 36-liter backpack with the hip belt, the whole bit, which worked out great. I walked in sandals.
Sandals?
Yeah, my Keen sandals.
Those are walking sandals.
These are walking sandals. The nice thing about the sandals I use is that it has a rubber-covered toe. Mm-hmm. So coming downhill, especially tripping on rocks and whatever, I never stubbed my toes. My feet became incredibly calloused and filthy. Mm-hmm. So I had a nice little scrub brush with me as well. But in my backpack, you can go online, on Facebook, any place under the sun, and they'll say, these are all the things you need. And some of the issues are, is it going to be cold? Is it going to be hot? Is it going to be rainy? Is it going to be snowy? And since I walked between June and September, it was hot, so all I needed was shorts. So I brought 3 changes of clothing and 1 dress. And the dress was just more of a over frock thing. So if I had to go to someplace nicer, I'd have something
a nice dinner, or like all the pilgrims did.
Back at 1,000 years ago, they all got dressed up.
Yes.
And sometimes it was just nice to get out of my clothes. So I had 3 changes of clothes, underwear, bras. And then as far as toiletries, I was very minimalistic. My biggest issue was making sure I had enough sunblock, because I'm walking in the summer, that I had to especially cover my face. And one thing I didn't cover very well was my hands. So my hand is very dark, and I wore long sleeves. So I have funky looking hands and arms right now.
Golfer's tan.
Very much a golfer's tan.
Okay.
So I had my my backpack ended up weighing about 18 pounds altogether.
And I'm not a hiker, so is that heavy? Or
I didn't. Well, every morning when I lifted it, I did a, oh God, you got to put this on. But then you get it on, set the straps on so it's resting on your hips, and you take off. I did have trekking poles that I brought with me, one of which broke like probably 2 weeks into it. So, but there are stores all over the place. Now you have to understand that currently you're essentially walking on a trail that has a small town or village about every 3 to 5 miles.
Okay.
So it would be on a day's trek, it would be like walking from Mansfield to Midlothian. That would be a full day with 2 or 3 little places to stop, eat,
that's
whatever.
A hike.
Yeah, it was a hike. But I mean, I drive down there just about every day. So it's not that much. Our concept of distances is incredibly different. So I did wear a pair of sandals for the day hike, and at most, actually all places, you don't even walk in the door without taking off your hiking shoes, walking shoes for the day. So I had my dirty day pair and my clean and my fancy evening wear, which was exactly the same pair.
You fancy
so I brought
evening
2.
Wear.
Well, I did.
Nice.
I brought 2 pairs of the same sandals, and intentionally so that if one pair, if it didn't make it, then I would still have a pair to be able to wear. Yeah, so that was my fancy stuff. As you probably noticed on most of my posts, it looked like I wore exactly the same thing because, I had 2 shirts exactly the same. And
she's wearing the same thing
every day.
After day. Yeah.
Every day.
The Camino for many people is a religious experience.
Mm-hmm.
Was this for you?
Yes and no. I am not a religious person. Used to be at one, raised Catholic. Mm-hmm. So I know all the humana, stand up, sit down, fight,
right.
For Mass. Hadn't
watch out for the lightning bolt.
I honestly hadn't been to Mass in 15, 20 years. I went to Mass quite frequently, partly because there was absolutely nothing else to do in a town when the only thing that's happening is, Mass before the restaurants opened.
Yeah.
But it was all in Spanish or French, depending on which country I was in at the time. And for those that don't know, if you go into one Catholic church anywhere in the world, it pretty much follows exactly the same pattern. So I knew what was going on, didn't know exactly what was going on. I was a couple of things about it, always odd with the concept of how I don't know if intense is the right word, but of how devoted people are to their religion and what they are willing to do, particularly historically. You can talk about hundreds of thousands of years ago with the Spanish Inquisitions and all these other things, all really related to religion. And even in Spain, walking through it, there was St. James. Let's just take St. James.
Okay.
He's known for the Camino. He's known to be, an apostle of Christ. St. James is also known as Slayer of the Moors. So you have statues of him walking with his staff and his shell on his hat, or you have statues of him on a horse rearing back with a big sword. And there were a couple of churches that had heads that he'd, slammed off. So part of that is in relation to the Moors, Muslims that had invaded Spain, and they gave it. But I found out that St. James actually never slayed any Moors. is just the knights and the soldiers would pray to St. James to give them strength to get rid of these, people. But I was mostly impressed with the kindness and love that I would see from people.
Yeah.
And also concerned that these churches and cathedrals that could seat hundreds of people had maybe 10 gray-haired people in it.
Wow.
For Mass. And me.
And going to Mass, you mentioned that you've been to a Catholic Mass or two. Once you know the routine, stand up, sit down, kneel, no matter what language it's in, the format of the Mass is the same. I've been to Mass in Spanish, French, and Latin. And it's the same thing. You stand up at a certain time. You kneel at a certain time. You take communion at a certain time. So I would assume same in while you were on the Camino.
Yes. So what I would do is that I would go to the church and mostly to meditate, mull over my day, kind of thing. I think it serves a purpose. And I do think I've always felt that prayer is not praying to ask for something, some entity out there bestow me with money or gifts or new shoes or whatever. I think prayer is an opportunity to stop and reflect and to think, how can I build inner strength to accept whatever is going on in my life, whether it be health or, financial issues or whatever. So it was always kind of nice to walk into a always cool building, generally speaking, cool building. No air conditioning. So, there was a little self-preservation involved here that the coolest place in town was the church.
With
literally and figuratively.
Their 12-inch brick walls that kept the heat out.
Yes.
And
so if you wanted to cool off, go into the local church and you can at least sit there and cool off.
And these are churches that were built 1,000 years ago.
Or more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of them were built on Roman ruins, or that the Roman temple was then converted into a church. So you're talking, incredibly old buildings. And in churches, when you walk in and you see these big cathedrals and you see all these little altars along the side of the church, well, those are families that have purchased that little section for their own little mass, tombs, burial sites. They generally, 1,000 years ago, had their own family priest. So in any one of these churches or cathedrals, there could be 20 masses going on at the same time. Because everybody in their own little thing. So there weren't necessarily pews going up and down the whole thing. It was this little guy there. There was one, I honestly went to so many cathedrals. I think it was in probably Leon or Burgos that the family of a cardinal had purchased their own little side altar chapel thing, and they hung the cardinal's hat from the ceiling. And so here is this cardinal's hat hanging from the ceiling, 50 feet up or however far up that is, and his tomb's over here, and then the family's all lined up in the wall or in the floor. Usually they're buried in the floor. So they're that kind of dedication and thought that their belief in an afterlife and that this is the way to get there, to me is always fascinating. But it always fascinates me what motivates people. And that is probably the biggest conversation on the Camino, is asking people why they're walking the Camino. And there's generally several reasons. The younger people, I'd say between 20 and mid-30s, are walking it because it's a cheap European vacation. Seriously.
Yeah, okay.
We can go on a hike. We have cheap places to stay. Got no money. It's fun.
Okay. With the exception of the airfare,
Mm-hmm.
So from day one on the Camino to the 73rd day, how much do you think you spent?
For the whole 90 days, I spent around $7,000.
Okay.
So definitely, well, that includes a week in Paris and a week in Barcelona.
Right.
So,
well, that's okay.
And that was much more expensive.
I was trying to narrow that down to at least
I would say an average about $50 or less a day.
Okay.
And that included breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and
a plate
room
and
board.
a bed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
not bad.
So, yeah, no, you can't get that here. That's for sure.
You just have to work for it.
Yeah. Yes, you just have to walk and get there.
Now, talk about walking. The route that you took from southern France to Santiago. There are dozens of caminos.
I think 30 or 40 or
that eventually wind up in Santiago. Right. One of the more popular ones goes out of Portugal, out of Porto.
Yes.
Why did you choose the route that you took?
I think that was the easiest one for me to get to the beginning. Although I discovered when I was done, there was an easier one that starts near Paris, and I could have, which added about a couple hundred miles.
Just a couple hundred.
Just a couple hundred miles. But which I ended up doing the extra 200 because once I got to Santiago, I had plenty of time. So I went ahead and walked out to Finisterre and back, which was another 200-mile round trip. So
that's right, because once you reached Santiago, you had to go someplace else to get a flight out.
Yeah, I had to go back to Paris.
And
then the question was, well, now what do I want to do? So it's kind of interesting to not be in any hurry and just be able to literally kind of throw a dart at a board and go, now where do I want to go? But I'm very glad that I walked out to Finisterre, which is the end of the world. It is literally Finis and Terra world. It is the westernmost point of continental Europe.
Huh.
And to stand on the rocks there on the seashore, to look out at the horizon, and to me think that somebody stood here and said, I wonder if there's anything beyond the end of the world. I think I'll hop in a boat and go there. I mean, that's mind-blowing for me personally. Yeah. As is, I've always been fascinated with the Oregon Trail, because I lived in Washington, Oregon, California, that somebody thought that my life is so bad here, that there's so much more opportunity there, that I think I will pack up my whole family, all of my belongings, and walk 3,000 miles to have a better life, knowing that maybe half of us will make it.
Yeah.
I might lose half my family along the way, but that prospect of a better life, of something different, is greater than the reality here. I mean, I don't see any of us saying, I think I'll just, I don't know how, I cannot tell you how many people have said that I am so brave for doing this.
Yeah.
And particularly by myself. And I'm going, no, this isn't brave at all. What's brave is the family from Venezuela that thinks they're going to hop into a little raft, cross the Gulf of Mexico, and then walk another 1,000 or 2 miles to the U.S. border for asylum. That's brave.
Right. Right.
Not my knowing I got a bed, 3 meals in a cot every day. That's just a long walk with no golf.
Did you miss golf?
No.
2 questions. What advice would you give to someone who was thinking on doing the Camino? And what would you do differently if you were to do the Camino again?
My advice would be don't listen to any advice.
Just do it.
Just do it. Just do it.
No reservations.
No reservations. Well, because a lot of it you can't. I think I would still make reservations for the first couple of days so that you can ease into it and feel comfortable. And then after that, make your own path and figure out how far you can walk, what you want to do. Because there were some times that I'd get into a town that was, very difficult thing about Spain, the siesta business.
Which is what, like 3 to 5 in the afternoon, or
depending on what town or village you're in, it might be 1 to 6, it might be 2 to 4, it might be 3 to 7.
And dinner's not till 10 o'clock at night.
And dinner's not till 10 o'clock. So my day consisted of, I would get up when I got up, I'd walk a couple hours, and I did have an app on my phone that could tell me where it had little icons of what had cafes, what had stores, pharmacy, hospitals, things like that. So I'd go, okay, so it's about 2 hours to walk to this town, cafes there, I'll have breakfast. So I'd walk 2 hours, have breakfast, walk a few more hours, have lunch, and then walk to where I'm staying for the night. But the first thing you do when you get to where you're staying is find out when the next meal is. Yeah. Because if the restaurant closes at 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock and you're there at 3 o'clock, and the restaurant doesn't open again until 9 o'clock.
When's your next meal?
Yeah, when's your next meal? So you figure out when you're going to eat, and then you plan accordingly. So essentially it would be either eat then or eat later, take a shower, change clothes, wash your dirty clothes, hang them out to dry, then go do things. Sometimes it would be taking a nap because you were tired. And sometimes it would be like there was this one place that I was walking down the road and I met this lovely lady, Lucy, and met with her and walked with her for a little ways. And we both had reservations at this one hostel in this one town. But as we're walking, you saw this old castle on top of the hill. You keep getting closer and closer and closer and wondering what that was. So we get to the town where we were supposed to stay, and the castle was still a little off in the distance. And there was a little piece of paper on the door saying, sorry, we're closed and we're not opening, till 3 or 4 days from now.
Like when Dorothy got to Oz.
Yeah, sorry, we're closed.
Sorry, we're closed.
So it's like, okay, I guess we just walk to the next town and see if we can find a place. So we walked to the next town, found a place to stay, and it was at the base of the where the castle was. And I walk. They had a little bar cafe there, and talking with the bartender, saying, "Is it very far to get up to the top where the castle is?" And he tells me, no, but you'll need a key because it's locked. And I said, okay, well, no, that's okay. I'll just want to go up and walk around and see it. And he goes, oh, no, here.
Here's the key.
Here's the key. And he said, well, if anybody's coming up after you and they want the key, just give it to them.
Yeah.
Okay, so I walk up there, had a great time visiting this castle that it's very old ruins. There was a chapel there the whole bit. Come back down to the bar. Asked for a glass of wine because I know it was cold, nice and refreshing. He goes, oh, no, you don't want wine. I went, oh, well, I kind of do, but whatever. So he makes what they call Tinto de Verona, which is a mild sangria. It's about half a glass of red wine, club soda, and lemon. And it was very refreshing.
I was going to say.
And that became my go-to drink for the rest of the Camino. And the Lucy didn't want to hike. She had bad blisters, and so she didn't hike up to the castle with me. And she had said, "Oh, well, the cathedral here is closed because a lot of them are locked. They don't want people in there breaking or pillaging, and they're opened during services." And I said, "Oh, too bad. It would be really kind of nice to see it." The same bartender pulls out another set of keys.
Yeah, just happen to have that key too.
He also happened to be the mayor.
Oh, okay.
The only bar, the only hostel, and the mayor of the town. So we had the keys. So we go to this cathedral essentially across the street. And church, cathedral, it's if it's big and whatever. So we walk into this church that was essentially empty. And Lucy, who I come to find out is a professional opera singer.
Wow.
Sings Ave Maria in this empty church. And it was just like, I couldn't have planned this any better.
With the hard wall acoustics is just
it just still brings tears to my eyes of how it is. So because there was a sign on this frickin' door that said we were closed, I ended up with this amazing experience.
And you immediately got your phone out and recorded this?
Yeah.
You did?
I did.
Okay.
I recorded some of it.
Okay.
I do not feel comfortable because I feel it's disrespectful to record things in churches during masses, whatever. And I was behind her when she started singing, and the gentleman and I are just, our eyes are kind of like bulging out of our heads, going, "Whoa!"
You're right.
Yeah.
There's nothing like being in a hard-walled room and listening to music where
With the
it
huge
just
dome ceiling.
Yes, the
acoustics.
reverberation, and you talk about being brought to tears. I mentioned earlier in this interview having gone to mass in French, and this was a midnight mass on Christmas Eve.
Oh my goodness!
In Paris, and the nuns came out and sang "Silent Night" in French. With in one of the oldest churches in Paris, and it just reverberated. It literally, I took my tie and I wiped my eyes. That it brought tears. And as a musician, it's very, very difficult to get me that emotional when it comes to music.
It doesn't take anything to get me emotional. Pepsi commercials, Hallmark card commercials. I'm down with it. But so that, just by circumstance, I had a lot of interesting experiences. I have no idea if that even remotely answered any question you had.
If I recall, the question was what advice and would you do it again?
I definitely do. As a matter of fact, I am thinking about doing not that particular route again, but do a different route. There is a Camino de Francesco, which goes. It actually is the road to Rome.
Okay.
So I think you start in southern France and go around the Mediterranean down to Rome. And that looks pretty interesting. But all of them are, some have better accommodations, others don't. Like the road from Portugal doesn't have, the accommodations are fewer and farther between. So that was one of the reasons for doing the Camino Francis, that I knew it was it's the most popular, well-trodden one, so that there were, many more options available on how far I could walk and not walk. Could extend it. You can even start in England, Ireland, take a ferry across at southern England, and then you start up again in Ocaran.
Yeah.
But I thought the Camino Francis was more doable for me at the time.
Way, way back at the beginning of the interview, I had you describe day one. Now, to me, I look at this as my one and done only time of having jumped out of an airplane. I remember when I jumped, and I remembered when I landed. The rest of it is pretty much a blur. Let's talk about day 73 and describe what it was like finally making it to the altar of Santiago.
Well, it was very interesting walking into Santiago. I had caught up with a couple who were from France, and we were walking along a little bit. They were walking into Santiago for the first time. They had been walking for 10 years, taking a 1-week vacation every year, walking about 100 kilometers. And this was essentially their final lap. So that's one thing. It's like, and they were like overwhelmed with, it's taken us 10 years to do this.
Wow.
As I'm walking towards the cathedral, I run into the gentleman that I met on the very first day.
Right.
So it's like the 10 years, the repeat. And this is where it's emotional. You walk into the front of the cathedral, and there are hundreds of people with their backpacks just standing around, all exhausted, all tired, all overwhelmed, and like, it's done. And then the next thing that you do is you walk through the holy door, which is only open in holy years. And this happens to be a holy year that the Pope declared it was a holy. It was technically last year, but they extended the holy year because it was because of COVID.
Yeah.
So you walk through the holy doors, and then you directly walk down to the tomb of St. James. And you're sitting here 10, 15, 20 feet away from some dude who was alive, lived, and talked with Jesus. And no matter what your religious faith or whatever is, to me, that's like, I guess I do have a belief system of what would Jesus do. Yeah. And that's all you need. That's all you need in any situation. What would Jesus do? It has nothing to do with a faith in a superior being or whatever, but to sit there and look at this tomb and go, this guy lived and talked and walked with a philosopher, scholar, person who loved everybody, whose sole purpose in life was to teach us to love one another, period. And to have that as the recurring theme for 90 days was so refreshing, so beyond my comprehension.
Yeah.
And then to come back and the first thing off the plane is of a bunch of crap that will have no...
A lot of first world problems.
Oh, yeah. That will have no significant issues, everything from my food's cold on the plane to, whatever the, political brouhaha issue is that has nothing to do with loving one another. Absolutely nothing.
Try walking a mile in my shoes. Yeah. Meaning, you just walk 700 miles. Your food's cold? Try walking a mile in my shoes.
Yep. And or that's so insignificant.
Exactly.
It has no purpose, value, whatever. So I think if nothing else, I walked away being more humbled with what life is about and what we as human beings should be. One of the masses I went to at the top of this mountain in a monastery, I think they were talking about, is it John 14, love? That God is love?
John 4:8.
Yeah, I knew there was a John.
Yes, God is love, and all who live in love live in God. God lives in them.
Yes. And it's not saying to praise God. It's not saying to praise Jesus. It's not saying to praise Allah. It's saying to love.
Live in love.
Live in love.
Yeah.
Period. And that's what I just get so disheartened to see that is not what I see in day-to-day life here. I received an awful lot of kindness. I was the old lady that everybody was worried about and made sure one day I had a couple walk back to make sure I was okay because I hadn't made it to the hostel yet.
Wow.
It's like, no, I'm fine. I'm just
taking my time.
Yeah, just taking my time. So
if someone wanted to watch or go really just relive your experiences, would you recommend? Are your posts on Facebook
yes.
open to the public?
You know what? No, I've got a private Facebook group, but I'm willing to add followers' requests.
Okay.
So,
and how do they access that?
On Instagram, it would be Christy on the Camino. And on Facebook, it would be Christy Silvas. And I don't post much on Facebook. I usually post my summer trips. I think, Steve, you're aware of the fact I'm on a mission to go to all the national parks.
Right.
So every summer we would travel around the country and go to national parks, which I've been to over 300 of them, believe it or not. And there's about 427, I think, at this moment in time. So I'm getting down to the nitty-gritty on that, but things like the Arctic Circle National Park and the American Samoa National Park are a little harder to get to.
Yeah.
Don't know if I'll make it there. We'll see.
And on Instagram, again, Christy on
the Camino.
And it's CHRISTY. Christy on the Camino.
Mm-hmm. And everything's still, because I posted as thank you, Rebecca and Samantha Silvas, for being my social media advisors.
And I'm glad you mentioned thanks. Is there anybody that you want to recognize before we close out this interview?
Well, certainly, my family, Paul, he was very supportive of me to do it. And certainly my kids and their partners, they all, go, Mom, go.
Yeah.
Although I did have one incident on the Camino that kind of scared the beepers out of them. I have a Garmin watch, which I bought specifically for the Camino. It hooks up with this Relive app, so it maps where you walked, and you could take pictures along the way, and it posts it, and that goes on. Automatically goes on to Instagram. And I had programmed my watch for my kids to be an emergency contact. So one day I was done with my walk. I go to wash my clothes, and washing clothes mostly was in a laundry tub, and you're scrubbing. Well, I had my watch on. I thought, I don't need my watch on while I'm washing, getting it all soapy. So I took it off and put it in my fanny pack. So I'm washing, and my fanny pack's banging against this laundry tub.
Oh, no.
And about 5 minutes later, my daughter's calling me, Mom, are you okay? I'm going, yeah, what's up? Well, apparently my Garmin watch thought that my heartbeat had stopped and I'm rolling down a hill and sent an alert to all my kids going,
whoops.
And I look at my phone, and there were 27 text messages. Mom, are you okay? Mom.
Rolling down the backside of the Pyrenees.
The good news was it was about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning their time. So it wasn't a 1 a.m. middle of the night wake-up call.
Nice.
But then I couldn't figure out how to turn off the emergency alert. So that is one thing that I would make an advice as to what's your backup plan. And my backup plan was knowing that you can take a taxi to the nearest bus station, to the nearest airport, and leave whenever you want. You don't have to walk the whole thing. Take your time and enjoy the journey, because life is nothing but a journey, and about the people that we meet and the scenes that we participate in and the life that we choose to live. It's not about the final destination.
Right.
Because once you get there, that's all she wrote. It's the journey.
I've enjoyed listening to your stories. And I'm sure we could sit for another hour, and maybe we'll have you back for part 4, part 5, or part 6.
I'm retired now.
That's
I got nothing.
Thank you for being on About Mansfield.
I am just delighted.
Your stories were fascinating. I can't wait to have you back and talk more specifically about some of these little towns and the cathedrals and even just the food that you ate.
Yeah, I need to go back and review my own posts, because there were so many, and I kept asking, am I I was really doing it for myself, but yeah, it's like you said earlier, the start and the end, and the middle, there's some blurring, and then something will crop and go, oh yeah, I remember that. That was really cool, or that was hard or easy or whatever. But
thanks again for being here.
You are quite welcome. Pleasure.